2 weeks ago, I thought about John as I was standing in another part of the world, in Vietnam. I don't want to be, excuse me if it was an emotional trip. I was there to usher.
The audio's quiet on this, and I apologize.
Mark of progress of the two countries, pushed by John, and I might add, another John, this former Secretary of State, John from Massachusetts, won the Silver Star as well. Once at war, we are now choosing the highest possible partnership made possible through John's leadership. I mean it sincerely. Think about it. While in Hanoi, I visited a marker depicting where John had endured all the pain. Imprisoned 5.5 years, solitary confinement for 2 years, given an opportunity to come home if he just said a couple things. He was beaten, bloodied, bones broken, isolated, tortured, left unable to raise his arms above his shoulders again. As I stood there paying my respects, I thought about how much I miss my friend. And it's not hyperbole. From the bottom of my heart, I mean this. I thought about something else as well. I thought about how much America missed John right now. How much America needed John's courage and foresight and vision. I thought about what John stood for, what he fought for, what he's willing to die for. I thought about what we owed John, what I owed him, and what we owe each other. We owed each other as well, Americans as well. You see, John's one of those patriots, when they die, their voices are never silent. They still speak to us. They tug at both our hearts and our conscience, and they pose the most profound questions. Who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe? What will we be? For John, it was country first. Sounds like a movie, but it's real with John. Honor, duty, decency, freedom, liberty, democracy. And now history has brought us.
And a baby crying in the background. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Biden made this statement about, attacks on democracy. And instead of they were going to do it at Valley Forge. There was a talk about doing he's going to be doing this speech about how precious democracy is and how it's important to shore it up as part of his, the Biden campaign for the next year leading into the election is not just going to be about him being president and all the stuff they're going to run on the record, but also about protecting democracy from people who don't want it, from the Trumps of the world, right? Call Armenia, see if they can sponsor you to make a UN statement rebuttal. That's a great idea, Ron. Sorry, I've got to catch the chat up so I can catch up with you guys. But they decided to do this in Arizona because it's a swing state, and there's a lot at play in Arizona, and Arizona's caught a lot of shit from Republicans as well over the last little bit. I mean, from Kerry Lake to Mike Pillow, they've been attacking the state nonstop, and a lot of the investment that the Biden administration has put into through the CHIPS Act and other stuff has gone directly to Arizona. There are more chip factories being made in Arizona than any other single place. Now, there's a couple other places that they're making, Ohio and Indiana specifically. But Arizona, because of ASU and because of, the technical colleges that they have there and the like, there's a pipeline of tech workers who know how to do this shit. Obviously they need a lot of water to make chips, and they picked a place that's very strange. But the fact is, there's a lot of unused land they could dig very deep in the ground and put in these, cooling systems and put a lot of the sort of like the power generation and cloud computing factory, like sites and all that kind of stuff are very good in desert communities because below the ground it's very, very cold actually. So, anyways, Arizona is benefiting a lot from the CHIPS Act. Arizona is benefiting a lot overall from, the investment that the Biden administration is making. And the irony is that, Kerry Lake's running on this, get the fucking federal government out of here. And this is another example where Biden is specifically targeting a state that is purple, leaning it blue by making sure that there are jobs that have legs in the state. And so they decided to start this at the inaugural opening of the John McCain Library in Arizona. Why don't they see what we see in Biden? Because they can't. If they did for a second, they'd have to jettison everything they think about Donald Trump. If that makes sense. Your son called. What did you miss? You just missed some poignant words from Biden, and then somebody had heckled him about fentanyl or border shit, or whatever. But the point is, it was a moment for him to once again eulogize John McCain and remind everybody that bipartisanship actually does function. And there was a time when we kind of took it for granted. And again, you have to have a gauge. You know, if there's a 1 to 10 in how much someone is a political opponent or an enemy, and 10 being an enemy and 5 being a political opponent and 1 being a friend, let's say, or being somebody that just irritates you, but you basically agree. I don't know what the scale would be, but if everybody's a 10, then nobody's a 10. You're the 10. It's like an I Am Legend moment. I don't know if you know the story, but the Omega Man and the Last Man on Earth, and then I Am Legend, the story that I Am Legend is based on, even though they fucked up the Will Smith version of it and blew off the entire ending that it was supposed to have, is that there's this guy, he's the last man on Earth, and vampires have taken over, and his family's been killed, and everybody's been turned into these flesh-eating monsters or whatever, and he's the last guy, and every night he fights them off, and they try to get him to come out, and they scare him, and they try to use, like the females that look a little human or whatever, they try to lure him out because he's lonely and broken, and he fights that off, and in the daytime he goes out and he kills them so he can wipe out all the vampires so that humanity can come back, and he realizes he's the only one left. And they finally catch him and they crucify him, they kill him, because he kills their families during the day when they're sleeping. He's the monster. And when they put him up, when they're hanging out, he realizes in that moment that he always thought he was right, and he realizes I am legend, which basically means like I am the boogeyman. I thought I was the good guy and they were the monsters, when I'm the monster. I'm the one killing them in their sleep, and I'm outnumbered. So whatever. The book that's the tale of it, is like, at what point do you become such a minority that your attack on the majority makes you a monster? Especially if you're that destructive. If the only way through, is to destroy that majority, that group, whatever it is, and have your way with them, and you kill them when they're at their most vulnerable, does that not indeed make you a monster, right? And so that's, and that kind of applies to that whole idea that if everybody's a fucking 10 all the fucking time, if everybody's like, they're a fucking monster, Nazi about everybody, then nobody is. Thanks for ruining the end. Okay, there have been 3 movies made of it, and the book came out in like 1940. Simmer. What's this an analogy of? Well, in this particular case, it's that if you castigate all Republicans as automatic Nazis because they caucus with other people who are genuinely awful, and they're trying to steer their party back while excising, but they're trying to maintain their actual values and stuff, but you've just written all of them off. Eventually you become the monster. That's the worry. And so it's a good reminder to go, nobody's always right about everything. We can agree on the problem but disagree on the solution, which is most of the time what you have in a democracy. Most people agree on the problem but disagree on the solution to it. And the goal should be hash out the best solution between people who maybe disagree. And that's where, get ready for the phrase, diversity is our strength comes from. Diversity is useless in terms of if we all think there's a different problem. That doesn't help. If you're in the Donner Party and some people are like, I think the most important thing is that we're lost, we get back on the trail. I think the most important thing is that we go hunt and find food. I think the most important thing is that we set up camp. The problem is you're lost. But if everybody decides that the real problem is not that we're lost, it's that I'm tired, or I'm hungry, or we got to do this, and then you kind of scatter, no one will get anywhere. No one will survive. You have to agree on the problem. That's diversity in terms of, and that's where you do have, I think in the MAGA world, they don't believe there is a problem a lot of the time. That is where the distinction is. But when you get people who are sensible, You know, if you talk about comprehensive immigration reform, for example, it's a bipartisan issue. There's a lot of Republicans who agree that we need comprehensive immigration reform. But it's in the minutia where you got to hammer it out. That's why we have committees. That's why they do markups. It's all that kind of stuff. And that is not war. That's not fighting. That's not revolution. That's just fucking democracy. Diversity is good when everybody can go bring in a variant of the solution while we all agree on the problem. And then you can hash out which one's the most effective. Yeah? Okay. Anyways, that said, I just consider that here at House Parks Mega Worldwide, consider that me just giving you a moment of actual logical governing philosophy.